You're grounded until you apologize to your stepmother. My dad, Arthur, roared that in front of our entire family, 47 people, packed into the living room for his birthday. Laughter, not understanding, but uncomfortable nervous laughter, echoed around the room. My cheeks burned, but I just said, "All right." The next morning, he probably expected me to come crawling, full of remorse. He'd sneer, "Finally learned your place, Olivia?" Instead, he walked past my bedroom, stopped dead, and saw an empty room. And then, an hour later, our family attorney, Sarah Chin, rushed in, shaking, practically shouting, "Arthur, what in the world have you done?" Here's the thing about being grounded at 28. It's not just humiliating, it's degrading. It's a power move designed to make you feel small, worthless, utterly obedient. But Arthur had no idea. He'd just lit the fuse on a bomb that would obliterate everything he'd spent 30 years building. And I, Olivia Hayes, was about to watch it all burn from the best seat in the house. 72 hours after that public spectacle, Arthur stood in a ballroom full of Boston's business elite, about to discover that his overlooked daughter wasn't just some IT support girl who tinkered with computers. I was the chief technology officer and co-founder of a $75 million tech company. And I was the only person standing between him and the biggest contract of his life. The look on his face when that realization finally dawned on him? That was just the appetizer. Let me back up a little, explain how we got to that point. For 3 years, I lived in Arthur's reconstructed family like a ghost. I wasn't quite his daughter anymore, more like a tenant he barely tolerated. The kind who pays rent but doesn't get a say in household decisions. The kind who shows up for family dinners but gets talked over whenever she tries to contribute to the conversation. My mom died when I was 16. Cancer. It was brutal, it was fast, and it destroyed my dad. For 2 years after, it was just the two of us, trying to figure out how to exist in a house that felt too empty. We were rebuilding something, you know? Not what we had before, but something that could work. Then Arthur met Vanessa at a charity gala when I was 19, away at MIT. She was recently divorced with a teenage son, Braden. Within 6 months, they were married. Within a year, I came home for Thanksgiving break to find my childhood bedroom had been converted into Vanessa's home office. Braden, apparently, needed the bigger room for his gaming setup. Nobody asked me. Nobody even mentioned it until I showed up. But I adjusted. I told myself it was fine. Families blend. People move on. My dad deserved happiness after everything he'd been through. Except the blending only went one direction. Every month, I transferred $8,500 into the household account. That covered roughly 70% of all their expenses, though nobody ever acknowledged it. When I tried to bring it up once, Vanessa just smiled sweetly. "Well, you live here, too, sweetie. It's only fair you contribute." Contribute? Like I was chipping in for pizza, not bankrolling their entire lifestyle. The master bathroom renovation Vanessa wanted? $40,000 of my money. She picked out Italian marble and a Japanese soaking tub, then complained it took too long to install. The backyard pool maintenance? Also mine, even though I never used it because Braden and his friends had basically claimed it as their territory. Braden's brand new luxury car for his 26th birthday? Oh, you already know. Arthur made a big show of handing him the keys at a family dinner, going on about rewarding hard work and responsibility. Braden had been working at Arthur's construction firm for 8 months. He was chronically late, regularly hungover, and had already been written up twice for inappropriate behavior with female staff. But sure, hard work. I drove a 6-year-old compact car. When I graduated from MIT with my master's degree, Arthur took everyone out to dinner. At the restaurant, he spent 20 minutes talking about Braden's potential, how proud he was that his son was finally taking initiative in life, how he saw real leadership qualities emerging. Braden was 23 and working part-time at a gym. I had just finished a thesis on predictive algorithms for building automation that 3 different companies had tried to recruit me over. My advisor told me it was some of the most innovative work he'd seen in a decade. Arthur mentioned my graduation for maybe 45 seconds before moving right back to Braden's promising future. When my dad's business associates came over for dinner, Arthur would wave his hand dismissively and say, "Olivia does some computer work for the company," like I was fixing printers or resetting passwords. Like I was the person people called when they forgot their email login. One time, a potential investor asked me directly what I did. Before I could answer, Arthur jumped in with, "Oh, she keeps our systems running. Makes sure the Wi-Fi works. That kind of thing." He laughed. Everyone else laughed. I just smiled politely and excused myself to the bathroom, where I checked my phone and saw an email from a Fortune 500 company requesting a consultation on their new headquarters project. Fee, $50,000 for 2 weeks of work. I didn't tell Arthur about that project or the dozen others like it. The truth is, I didn't do computer work, not the way they imagined. I had single-handedly dragged his construction firm out of near bankruptcy by rebuilding their entire digital infrastructure from the ground up. When I graduated from MIT, Arthur's company was still using paper filing systems and spreadsheets from 2003. Their bidding process was a disaster. They'd lost 3 major contracts in 6 months because they couldn't submit competitive digital proposals. I spent 8 months rewriting everything. Built them a custom project management system. Created automated bidding software that could generate technical specifications in hours instead of weeks. Implemented real-time cost tracking that saved them hundreds of thousands in budget overruns. That $1.8 million government contract they won 18 months ago? I wrote every technical specification for the proposal, all 247 pages. I stayed up 72 hours straight to meet the submission deadline because Braden had been assigned to handle it and vanished for a long weekend in Miami. When the client called with questions, I was the one on the phone explaining the technical requirements. I was the one who debugged the bidding platform at 4 a.m. when their system crashed 2 hours before the final submission was due. At the celebration dinner after they won the contract, Arthur raised his champagne glass and spent 10 minutes praising Braden's vision and leadership. How Braden had shown such maturity and strategic thinking. How this contract proved Arthur had been right to invest in his son's future. Braden, who'd contributed exactly nothing except showing up to meetings late and nodding along without understanding a single technical detail. I sat there eating overpriced salmon that I technically paid for, thinking about how I just made them all wealthy, and none of them even knew. My job title. The worst part wasn't even the lack of credit. It was the active dismissal. When Braden inevitably screwed something up, which happened roughly twice a week, I'd fix it quietly, efficiently, without making a scene. Because that's what you do when you're trying to be a good family member, right? You support each other. You cover for each other. Except the support only flowed one direction. Anytime I needed something, even something small, it was inconvenient. When I asked Arthur if he could write me a recommendation for a professional certification, he said he was too busy. Maybe Braden could do it instead. Braden, who had no idea what I actually did. When I suggested updating the company's cybersecurity protocols because we were vulnerable to ransomware attacks, Arthur told me I was being paranoid and that we couldn't afford to spend money on theoretical problems. 3 months later, a competitor got hit with a ransomware attack that cost them $2 million and nearly destroyed their business. Arthur never mentioned my warning. Vanessa had perfected the skill of making me invisible while somehow making it seem concerned and maternal. When guests asked about me at parties, she'd say, "Oh, Olivia's around here somewhere," with a little laugh, like I was a family pet they'd misplaced. Then she'd add, "She's so quiet. You'd hardly know she lives here." Not like Braden, who's such a natural presence, such a leader. The constant little comparisons, the subtle redirections, the way she'd physically position herself between me and anyone trying to have a conversation with me at family gatherings. Once Arthur's business partner, David, asked me about my thoughts on a new construction technology. Before I could answer, Vanessa jumped in with, "Oh, Olivia wouldn't know about that. She's more of a behind-the-scenes person. But Brayden was just reading about that, weren't you, honey? Brayden hadn't read anything. He was scrolling through Instagram, but suddenly the whole conversation pivoted to him. The credit stealing was almost artful in its subtlety. When I'd successfully debugged a major system problem that saved Arthur's company $200,000, Vanessa mentioned it at dinner as how wonderful it was that Brayden's team had resolved that issue so quickly. I corrected her once, said it was actually my work, not Brayden's team. She just smiled sweetly and said, "Well, I'm sure you helped, dear, but it's so important to let Brayden get the recognition he deserves. He's at such a critical point in his career development." Arthur nodded along like this made perfect sense. The thing about this kind of treatment is that it's cumulative. One instance, you can brush off. But day after day, month after month, having your accomplishments redistributed, your words talked over, your presence minimized, it starts to rewire how you see yourself. I started second-guessing everything. When I'd suggest something at work, I'd immediately wonder if I sounded stupid. When I'd completed a difficult project, I'd downplay it before anyone else could. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to take up less space, cause less friction, be less of an inconvenience to Arthur's perfect new family. And Vanessa noticed. Of course, she noticed. That was the point. "You're so accommodating, Olivia," she'd say with false warmth. "So understanding. That's such a valuable quality in a woman." Translation: stay quiet, stay small, don't challenge the narrative we've built. The worst part was watching Arthur buy into it completely. This was a man who'd raised me, who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with calculus homework, who told me I could do anything I set my mind to. But somewhere along the way, he decided that supporting his new wife's son was more important than seeing his own daughter. At Brayden's 25th birthday party, Arthur gave a toast about how proud he was of the man Brayden was becoming. How excited he was to see Brayden take on more responsibility in the family business. How he knew Brayden would carry on the family legacy. I was sitting right there, the person who'd actually been carrying the business on my back for 2 years. Nobody toasted me. Nobody mentioned me. I might as well have been furniture. Here's what they didn't know, though. What none of them had bothered to discover. Because they were too busy writing me off. I made way more money than any of them realized. Way more than Arthur, actually, though that gap had been widening for the past 2 years. My official salary from Arthur's firm was $65,000. Modest, but respectable for Boston, just enough to justify my contributions to their household without raising too many questions. But the consulting work I did on weekends, the side projects they thought were just me playing with computers in my room? Those had quietly built something they couldn't begin to imagine. When I was at MIT, I'd met a professor named Dr. Ethan Vance. He was teaching a seminar on smart building technology and artificial intelligence integration. The guy was brilliant but couldn't get funding because investors didn't understand the practical applications. They saw it as too theoretical, too far out, not marketable. I saw the gold mine. We started working together my junior year. By the time I graduated, we'd developed 3 patents for building automation systems that could predict maintenance issues before they happened, optimize energy usage in real time, and integrate with construction management software to reduce costs by up to 30%. Dr. Vance left academia and moved into the private sector. He became CEO of what would eventually become Apex Holdings, one of the fastest-growing construction development firms in the Pacific Northwest. And I became his secret weapon. Every weekend, while Arthur and Vanessa and Brayden thought I was fixing computers or doing network maintenance or whatever they imagined I did, I was actually working with Dr. Vance and a team of engineers I'd assembled. We were building something revolutionary. Vertex Systems started as just the 2 of us working out of a shared office space in the North End. Within 6 months, we had our first major client. Within a year, we had 7 employees and $2 million in contracts. Within 2 years, we had 47 employees, an office in the Prudential Tower, and we were fielding acquisition offers we kept turning down because we knew we could build something bigger. The company specialized in smart building technology, automated systems for construction sites that could monitor everything from concrete temperature to equipment maintenance schedules, real-time monitoring systems that could predict structural issues before they became catastrophic, energy optimization algorithms that could reduce operating costs by hundreds of thousands annually for large commercial buildings. We had 14 patents, exclusive contracts with 6 of the 10 largest construction firms in Massachusetts, partnership agreements with 3 international development companies. I had a reserved parking spot in the financial district, an office with my name on the door, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Boston Harbor. On clear days, I could see across to the islands from my desk. My assistant sat in the outer office and managed my schedule. My team of 47 people worked 3 floors below me, and every single one of them knew exactly who I was and what I'd built. Dr. Ethan Vance, CEO of Apex Holdings, had my direct number. We talked 3 times a week. He flew me to conferences in Chicago and Washington, D.C. He introduced me to executives and investors as one of the brightest minds in construction technology he'd ever worked with. Arthur, on the other hand, just thought Dr. Vance was that guy from Olivia's old job who calls sometimes. Every morning, I'd leave the house in business casual clothes, deliberately downplaying how I dressed so I wouldn't raise questions. Vanessa once commented that I should dress more professionally if I wanted people to take me seriously. Apparently unaware that I regularly sat across from people who managed billion-dollar real estate portfolios. I'd drive my 6-year-old compact car to the Prudential Tower, park in my reserved spot, take the elevator to the 22nd floor, and step into an office where my title read, Olivia Hayes, Chief Technology Officer and Co-founder. Then I'd spend 8 hours managing multi-million-dollar contracts, reviewing patent applications, consulting with engineering teams, and negotiating deals that would make Arthur's biggest contracts look like rounding errors. At 5 p.m., I'd drive back to Arthur's house, change into comfortable clothes, and sit through dinner where Vanessa would ask how my little tech job was going, and Arthur would nod absent-mindedly, while Braden talked about whatever minor task he'd managed to not completely screw up that day. Nobody asked where exactly I worked. Nobody questioned why I had business cards I never left lying around. Nobody wondered why I sometimes took calls in my car before coming inside because the people on the other end were discussing deals worth tens of millions of dollars. They didn't ask because they didn't care. I was the quiet daughter who helped with computers. That was my role. That was all they needed me to be. The irony was beautiful in its way. Arthur spent years trying to build connections in Boston's construction industry, trying to get his foot in the door with major developers, trying to prove his company was capable of handling large-scale projects. Meanwhile, I was sitting at dinner tables with the people making those decisions. I was in the rooms where contracts were negotiated. I had relationships with executives who could make or break construction firms with a single phone call. And Arthur had no idea. Vertex Systems was valued at approximately $75 million. My personal net worth was somewhere north of $12 million, most of it tied up in company equity and investments. I'd paid off my student loans 3 months after graduating. I had a retirement account that was already better funded than most people's after 30 years of work. I owned a small rental property in Beacon Hill that generated passive income. And I was still transferring $8,500 a month to Arthur's household account because it was easier than explaining where my money actually came from. My lawyer, Sarah Chen, had been telling me for 2 years that I needed to establish firmer boundaries, that I needed to move out, stop bankrolling their lifestyle, maybe even tell Arthur the truth about what I'd built. I kept putting it off, telling myself that family was complicated, that Arthur had been through a lot with Mom's death, that maybe if I just kept being the good daughter, eventually he'd see me. Looking back, I realized I was scared. Not of Arthur's reaction to the truth, but of what the truth would prove. That he'd had a successful, accomplished daughter right in front of him this whole time, and he'd chosen not to see her because it didn't fit the family narrative he wanted. Sometimes we avoid truths because we know once they're out, we can't go back to pretending. The breaking point started with a $2 million disaster entirely of Braden's making. He'd promised a client impossible delivery dates without consulting anyone on the team. Then he disappeared to Miami for 5 days with his buddies while the deadline imploded. When the client threatened to sue, guess who got the blame? "This is your fault, Olivia," Arthur announced at dinner, his face red. "You should have been supervising him. Braden's still learning the business." I set down my fork. "He's 26, Dad, and I wasn't even assigned to that project." Vanessa's voice cut in, smooth as silk. "Don't make excuses, sweetie. Family supports family. Braden was counting on you to have his back." The audacity was breathtaking. That evening, I got an email from Thornton Development. They hadn't just complained about Braden. They'd specifically requested to work with me going forward. The email praised my exceptional problem-solving and professional integrity in cleaning up Braden's mess. They wanted to expand their contract, but only if I personally managed it. I forwarded it to Arthur immediately, hoping maybe this time he'd see me. 20 minutes later, Vanessa knocked on my bedroom door. "Delete that email," she said flatly. "It's addressed to me," I replied. "Doesn't matter," she said, examining her nails. The ones from the $300 manicure I'd paid for last week. "Braden needs this win for his resume. Your father agrees." The email never happened. I watched her leave, then forwarded the email to my personal account, then to my lawyer, Sarah Chen, with a note, document number 1. That email would resurface eventually, in a room full of witnesses, when the stakes were infinitely higher. My weekends were sacred. Not that anyone in my family noticed where I was going. "Olivia's doing her computer things," Vanessa would say, making little typing motions with her fingers like I was playing video games. If they'd bothered to track my location, they'd have found me 22 floors up in the Prudential Tower, in an office with my name on the door. Not Olivia Hayes, IT support. Olivia Hayes, CTO and co-founder, Vertex Systems. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Harbor. On clear days, I could see the islands. My assistant sat in the outer office. My team of 47 people worked 3 floors below me. Dr. Vance, my mentor from MIT, and I had started building something revolutionary 3 years ago. Vertex Systems specialized in smart building technology, automated systems for construction sites, real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance algorithms, energy optimization. We had patents, contracts, partnerships with half the major developers in Boston. And we were about to go supernova. The call came on a Sunday during family dinner. "Sorry," I said, glancing at my phone. "It's my old boss." Arthur rolled his eyes. "Tell them you're with family." I stepped onto the patio and lowered my voice. "Dr. Vance, the Apex board approved?" "Everything," he confirmed. $52 million for the construction project, but only with our exclusive tech integration. You know what that means? The exclusive agreement stands. Ironclad. No Vertex, no deal. I watched through the window as Braden helped himself to thirds while Vanessa praised his appetite for success. "Monday's perfect," I said. "I actually just signed something interesting. A new exclusive contract that goes into effect next week." "Good," Dr. Vance replied. "Because this deal changes everything." Monday morning, Arthur's secretary called me at 9 a.m. in a panic. "Olivia, where are you? Your father needs you in the office immediately. The Thornton Development situation." "I'm working," I said calmly. "This is an emergency." "Then you should have thought of that before dismissing my work as a hobby." I hung up. By noon, I had 6 more missed calls. By 3 p.m., Arthur himself called. "Olivia, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to get down here now. Thornton Development wants to speak with you directly, and we can't afford to lose this client." "I'm in a meeting." "This is more important." "No, Dad, it's not. Don't make me come get you. I'm 28 years old. You can't ground me. Click. That night at dinner, the atmosphere was tense. Arthur kept glaring at me. Vanessa pretended I didn't exist. Braden looked smug, like he'd been promised something. Olivia, Arthur finally said, we need to have a serious conversation about your role in this family and in my company. Okay. You're being selfish and childish. Braden is your brother. When the family succeeds, we all succeed. But you keep undermining him. I'm undermining him by doing my job well? You're making him look bad on purpose, Vanessa interjected. I'm making him look exactly like what he is. Arthur's fist hit the table. That's enough. You will respect your brother. You will respect this family, and you will start acting like a team player, or there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? I asked calmly. You're living under my roof. Don't forget that. I'm paying 70% of the bills. Don't forget that. The room went silent. Arthur's birthday party was 3 weeks later. Vanessa had gone all out, pulling out every stop like this was some kind of corporate gala instead of a 58th birthday. Catered dinner from that overpriced Italian place downtown. A live jazz band, ice sculptures, an open bar, 47 guests, including business associates, extended family, and half of Arthur's country club friends. The whole thing probably cost $15,000, money that ultimately came from the household account, which meant I'd paid for roughly $10,500 of my own humiliation. I showed up because not showing up would have caused more drama, and I was trying to pick my battles. I wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy, and positioned myself near the edges of the room. Made small talk with my Aunt Susan, who at least remembered I existed and asked about my work in vague, polite terms. I chatted briefly with one of Arthur's business partners who thought I was Arthur's administrative assistant and asked me to get him another drink. I didn't correct him, just gestured to the actual waitstaff and moved away. Braden was holding court near the center of the room, drink in hand, telling some story that involved lots of hand gestures and apparently hilarious punchlines based on the laughter. Vanessa stood nearby, beaming like a pageant mom watching her kid win first place. Arthur moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes, looking completely in his element. This was his world. These were his people. His success made visible and celebrated. I was just the daughter in the corner who nobody quite knew how to place. Around 9 p.m., Braden cornered me near the bar. He had that loose, confident look that meant he'd had 3 drinks and thought he was invincible. Dad wants to talk to you, he said with that stupid grin that made me want to dump my drink on his head. About what? Just come on. He's waiting in the den. I followed him through the house, past clusters of guests, into Arthur's private den. The room where he conducted business, made important phone calls, signed contracts. Bringing me here during the party meant this wasn't casual. Arthur and Vanessa were waiting. So were 2 of Arthur's business partners, David and Mark. Both of them in their late 50s. Both of them with decades of construction industry connections. This was a setup. Olivia, Arthur began, his tone formal, like he was opening a board meeting. We've been discussing the future of the company. Braden has shown tremendous promise over the past year, and we believe it's time for him to take on significantly more responsibility. Okay, I said neutrally. His growth has been impressive, David added. Arthur's done an excellent job mentoring him. I said nothing. Braden hadn't grown. He'd failed upward repeatedly while I cleaned up his messes. We want you to help facilitate his next phase of development, Arthur continued. Train him properly. Give him access to your projects and contacts. Help him build the kind of professional network that will serve him well as he takes on a leadership role. My projects and contacts for my weekend computer things? I asked, keeping my voice even. Arthur's jaw tightened. Don't be difficult, Olivia. You know what I mean. I actually don't. I'm asking what projects you're referring to since you've consistently made it clear my work is just a hobby, something I do to keep busy. The consulting work, Vanessa interjected smoothly. We know you've been doing projects on the side. Braden needs those connections for his career development. In this family, we share opportunities. We lift each other up. There it was. They'd figured out I had side work. They didn't know what, didn't know how much, but they knew it existed. And like everything else I'd built, they wanted to take it and give it to Braden. They wanted my clients, my relationships, my reputation, everything I'd worked for, handed over like it was community property. No, I said simply. The word landed like a brick through a window. Excuse me? Arthur's voice rose. What did you just say? I said no. Those are my projects, my clients, my work. I'm not handing them over. Everything you built using our resources, Arthur said, his face reddening. Our roof over your head, our support, the opportunities this family provided. You don't get to act like it's all yours. Your roof that I pay 70% of the expenses for. That roof? That's not the point, Olivia. And you know it. Then what is the point, Dad? The point is that you're being selfish and short-sighted. Braden is your brother. He deserves the same opportunities you've had. When this family succeeds, we all succeed. But you keep hoarding everything for yourself, and frankly, it's beneath you. David nodded along. Family businesses work best when everyone contributes their strengths. I've been contributing my strengths, I said, for 3 years. Braden's been taking credit for them. That's not fair. Braden jumped in, his voice defensive. I've been working hard. Really? Tell me about the Thornton Development Project. What technical specifications did you write? Braden's face went blank. I managed the client relationship by disappearing to Mexico and nearly costing us $2 million. Enough! Vanessa snapped. This is exactly the kind of attitude that's causing problems. You're creating division instead of supporting your brother. He has the same opportunities I've had, I said. He just doesn't have the same work ethic or competence. Vanessa gasped like I'd physically struck her. Braden's face went red with anger and embarrassment. Arthur stood up from behind his desk, his voice turning cold and authoritative. Here's what's going to happen, Olivia. You're going to hand over your client list to Braden by the end of this week. You're going to introduce him to your contacts personally. You're going to teach him everything he needs to know to manage those relationships, and you're going to start acting like a member of this family, or you can find somewhere else to live. Is that your final word? I asked. It is. Then I'll be out by tomorrow. I turned to leave, but Arthur's voice stopped me. Not so fast. I looked back. Your attitude tonight has been disrespectful and embarrassing, he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority he used with employees he was about to fire. You've been openly hostile to your stepmother, dismissive of your brother, and insubordinate to me. In front of my business associates during my birthday celebration. I looked at Vanessa, who was watching me with that calculating expression, like she was mentally tallying up every slight she could claim. For what? I asked. For your behavior tonight, for making Vanessa uncomfortable in her own home, for creating a hostile environment during what should have been a joyous family occasion. I'm not apologizing for having boundaries. Then you're grounded until you do. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. David and Mark exchanged uncomfortable glances. Through the doorway, I could see other guests starting to notice that something was happening, the voices in the den rising above the ambient party noise. You're grounding me? I asked slowly, making sure I'd heard correctly. Until you learn respect and how to properly behave as part of this family. Yes. I could have argued. Could have pointed out the absurdity. Could have explained right there, in front of David and Mark, exactly who I was and what I'd built and how utterly foolish Arthur was being. Instead, I just smiled. All right. I walked out of the den, grabbed my coat from the front closet, walked past 47 confused guests without explaining anything, and left. The next morning, Arthur came to check on me, to gloat probably, to make sure his punishment had landed. He found my room empty, closet cleared, desk cleaned out. Even the furniture I'd bought myself was gone. His family attorney, Sarah Chin, showed up an hour later after I texted her the situation. The woman nearly had a stroke. "Arthur, what did you do?" I grounded her. She was being disrespectful. "You do realize she's been paying most of your household expenses for 3 years? That was her contribution to the family. That was 70% of your lifestyle. Where do you think that money came from?" Arthur blinked. "Her job. The one at my company, where you pay her $65,000 a year. That doesn't cover $8,500 a month in household contributions plus her own expenses." The color started draining from Arthur's face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you might want to find out exactly what your daughter does for a living before you push her any further." But it was too late. 3 days later, Arthur had the most important contract signing of his life. Apex Holdings was awarding a $52 million construction contract for their new Pacific Northwest headquarters. It was the kind of deal that would cement Arthur's company as a major player. The signing was at the Boston Park Plaza. 200 VIP guests. Media coverage. The works. Arthur arrived early, Braden and Vanessa flanking him like proud peacocks. The Apex Holdings team was already seated. Dr. Ethan Vance, the CEO, smiled warmly as Arthur approached. "Arthur, good to see you. I believe we're just waiting for one more signature." "Everyone from my team is here," Arthur said confidently. "Actually," the Apex attorney said, glancing at her documents, "according to Clause 7.3 of the agreement, we need the CTO of Vertex Systems to sign off on the technical integration. Her signature is required for the deal to proceed." Arthur frowned. "I'm not familiar with that company." "Really?" Dr. Vance said, his eyebrows rising. "They're your exclusive tech partner for this project. We made that very clear from the beginning. No Vertex Systems integration. No deal. It's all in the contract. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. Vertex Systems holds the patents for the building automation technology we require. We've had this clause in place for 8 months. Arthur's attorney was frantically flipping through the contract. Braden had gone pale. "I can call their CTO now," Dr. Vance offered, pulling out his phone. "She's usually very responsive." 200 people watched as Dr. Vance made the call. His voice echoed slightly in the large ballroom. "Olivia, we're at the Park Plaza. The signing. Your signature's needed for Clause 7.3. "Yes, he's here." "I see. Understood." Dr. Vance hung up and turned to Arthur with an expression of polite confusion. "She says she no longer has ties to your company and isn't comfortable working with your firm. She's invoking the exclusivity clause and withdrawing Vertex Systems from the agreement." The room went dead silent. "What?" Arthur's voice cracked. "She's pulling out, which means we can't proceed with your company. The entire contract is void." "Who is Olivia?" someone in the crowd asked. "Olivia Hayes," Dr. Vance said. "CTO and co-founder of Vertex Systems. One of the most innovative tech companies in the Pacific Northwest. We've been working with her for 3 years." Someone else asked, "Hayes? Any relation?" Dr. Vance looked at Arthur with something between pity and disbelief. "She's his daughter." The whispers started immediately. Arthur stood there, his face cycling through emotions: confusion, denial, understanding, horror. "That's impossible," Vanessa said loudly. "Olivia works in IT support. She does computer repairs." "Ma'am," Dr. Vance said patiently, "Olivia Hayes has a master's degree from MIT. She holds 14 patents in smart building technology. Vertex Systems is valued at approximately $75 million. She doesn't repair computers." Braden's voice was weak. "This is a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Dr. Vance replied, "was thinking we'd work with a company that apparently didn't know what their own family member had accomplished." He stood up, his team following. "Gentlemen, ladies, I'm afraid this signing is cancelled. We'll be pursuing other contractors." As the Apex Holdings team filed out, I walked in from the side entrance. I'd been waiting in the hallway, timing it perfectly. I walked past Arthur without a word, showed my Vertex Systems ID badge to security, and headed straight to Dr. Vance. "Sorry I'm late," I said clearly, my voice carrying. "Had to finish some paperwork at the office." "We're still on for the Pacific Tower project tomorrow?" "Absolutely," Dr. Vance confirmed. "Different contractor, of course. But your tech integration is the star of the show either way." I finally looked at Arthur. His face had gone gray. Braden looked like he might be sick. Vanessa's expression was pure shock. "Dad," I said calmly. "I'm ungrounded now, I assume." I left the ballroom to absolute silence, except for the clicking of my heels on marble. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Within 48 hours, 3 other major clients had quietly pulled contracts with Arthur's firm. Word spread fast in Boston's construction industry. The man who'd been so dismissive of his genius daughter that he didn't even know what she did for a living wasn't someone people wanted to do business with. Thornton Development publicly announced they were partnering exclusively with Vertex Systems for all future projects. 2 more companies followed. Arthur's firm lost $14 million in contracts within a month. The social fallout was almost worse. The story made it to the local business section. Then it went viral on professional networking sites. Then it hit the online forums. CEO grounds his 28-year-old daughter for not giving her multi-million-dollar company to his stepson. The headlines were brutal. Vanessa's friends stopped calling. Braden couldn't show his face at the country club. Arthur's business partners started returning his calls 3 days late, if at all. I moved into a downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, furnished it with things I actually liked instead of whatever fit Arthur's aesthetic. Got a cat, named her Justice. I didn't block Arthur's number, but I didn't answer either. He left voicemails. First angry, then confused, then desperate, then apologetic. "Olivia, please, we need to talk." "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Your stepmom, she convinced me you were just doing basic tech work. Braden's career is ruined. The company is hemorrhaging money. Please." I deleted them all without listening to the end. 6 weeks after the failed signing, Sarah Chin, my attorney, called. "Arthur's filed for bankruptcy. The company's done." "Good. There's more." Vanessa apparently cleaned out what was left of their joint accounts and filed for divorce. Braden moved back to Philadelphia with nothing. "Good," I repeated. "He wants to meet with you, Olivia. He's asking for a chance to explain." "No, Riley, he's lost everything. He lost what he deserved to lose." But 3 months later, on a random Tuesday, I walked into a coffee shop downtown and found Arthur sitting at a corner table. He looked 20 pounds thinner, his hair completely gray, his expensive suits replaced by a simple sweater and jeans. "Hello, Olivia." I studied him for a moment, then sat down across from him. "You have 10 minutes. I have a board meeting at 3. You look well." "I am well." "The Forbes article," he said, his voice breaking. I read it 3 times. You're running a $3 billion company now. We had a good quarter. I'm an idiot, he said. I had a brilliant daughter right in front of me, and I was too blinded by Vanessa's manipulation and my own ego to see it. Vanessa didn't make you call my work a hobby, Dad. That was you. He nodded, accepting it. You're right. I wanted so badly to build the perfect new family that I destroyed the one I had. How's that working out? Vanessa took half of what was left. Braden won't return my calls. The house is in foreclosure. The house you paid 70% of. Your 10 minutes are up. Arthur started to stand, then stopped. Could we try again? Not as business partners. Just as father and daughter. I closed my laptop, giving him my full attention. Under certain conditions, I said carefully. Anything. First, therapy. You need to understand why you erased me so easily. I've started already. Dr. Ramirez, twice a week. That surprised me. Second, no business together, ever. You don't get to profit from my success after dismissing it. Understood. Third, you acknowledge what happened publicly. No rewriting history. You grounded your 28-year-old daughter for not giving away $75 million in assets you didn't know she owned. He flinched, but nodded. Fourth, respect is non-negotiable. One comment about me being dramatic. One suggestion I'm overreacting. One guilt trip about family loyalty, and we're done permanently. I accept all of it. Fifth, this isn't a reunion. It's a possibility. We start with coffee once a month. Public places. You earn trust back slowly, if at all. Coffee once a month, he repeated. I can do that. I stood, gathering my things. Next month, first Tuesday, same place. Don't be late. Olivia, he called as I reached the door. Vertex Systems. It's extraordinary. You're extraordinary. I know, I replied. I always was. You just finally noticed. Looking back now, being grounded at 28 was the greatest gift my father ever gave me, though not in the way he intended. What would you have done in my place?